Thank you for tuning in to watch our 4th annual Invest Nashville Leadership Summit. You're about to watch panel number 1, Bridging Progress, how mobility and infrastructure development are unlocking new real estate opportunities and the key challenges moving forward. Be sure to like and subscribe for more leadership insights. Enjoy.
Good morning. How we're in Nashville. Brother South. We got all those works. I'm not about to spray treatment, but I know it all when I said it was used to. Mobility in real estate development has become increasingly interconnected. These systems directly shape where development happens, how project is networked, and on what schedule. So we're joined today by some great minds. I think the tagline behind leaders, great leaders come from great minds. And so we got some great minds of leaders want to share some great words with us today. And what I'm going to do is give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves and tell what company you're from.
Appreciate that. It's always good to see you here every time this year. John Vardaman, I'm with DPR Construction. We're a national general contractor specializing in data centers, hospitals, commercial office, and life science construction. I'm currently part of our national operations team. So we're building a lot of big projects, both here in Tennessee, in the Southeast, and then all over the nation.
Good morning, everybody. Chris Jones, Middle Tennessee Electric. I'm the CEO, honored to serve in that capacity. We serve as Williamson, Rutherford, Wilson counties primarily. We bleed over into some other counties, the electric distributor in that area. And so if I may ask real quick, how many of you receive your service from Middle Tennessee Electric? If you'd raise your hand. It's an honor to serve all of you. So thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I don't know if they got anyone. Desmond, Jackbir, I get the privilege to the network engineering and operations team that provides service throughout Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina. Appreciate you today.
Great. Doug Blizzard with a company called Catapult. We're a 65-year-old company in Carolinas in the Southeast. We do HR and people services. I guess I'm the workforce part of this little day.
Well, we appreciate all the workforce included. So let's take a look back and also set the stage for what we're going to be talking about here this morning. McKinsey estimates that approximately a cumulative $6 trillion in investment will be necessary from 2040 to meet the need for new updated infrastructure around the world. So my question to all of you will share some of your perspective on this. In Nashville, how Painesville infrastructure investment has kept pace with the city and Middle Tennessee world.
I'll take a quick stab at it. Think about the eye of this question. I was almost late to this, and when I was stuck in traffic, and there was a utility upgrade project on the state highway I was driving down this morning. But that traffic jam, while I was waiting, the flag people let me by actually gave you a bit of a chance to do. I'm just selecting that we're pretty fortunate in the country we live in, the state we live in, and most of us don't have infrastructure access or source of contribute. There's water, there's power, there's food security. It's an access question. All right. So I think one, we got to start there. And we're pretty fortunate when you take that broader view. And then I think it's not so much do we have an infrastructure problem as do we have an infrastructure process. There's always going to be pluses and minuses. But when I say process, I mean, is it in the conversation that think events like this, how they're breathed it is? And is there a process to pay for? They think Nashville and Middle Tennessee has made a lot of strides in that. There's infrastructure that's expensive, right? If you ever put a new roof on your house, that's sort of the analogy I make. It's needed. It's probably the least sexy big purchase you'll ever make. It's not very satisfying, but it's absolutely needed. I see us doing that in significant ways with the water treatment plants in Nashville and even in LA counties, very Gunning-like. So I think we've got a good process there. We've got sort of ideas of how to fund that and how to pay for that. So I think we're keeping pace, but it's always going to be process. So generally speaking, I would say, look, progress, they go hand in hand. To me, in our region, we need forward every single
as fast as we can get into. And I'm not sure if they're sitting, man. So from an electric standpoint, also if you look at this electric on United Communications fiber broadband provider. But from an electric standpoint, we just been through a significant weather event in our region, as most of you know, an ice storm. And that demonstrates a certain need for greater resiliency. If we want to be who we want to be, I know we want to lead in every area. Actually, we have opportunity to do that. We need to be better at the things we're doing. So we need to be better in maintenance of what we have, but we need more of things like electric infrastructure. From the standpoint of an electric distributor, I feel good about what Memphis Electric is doing and how we're able to deliver, but we need to invest in more technology to be more resilient. And then the issue of generation and transmission capacity, we need TVA's responsibility for that here in our vicinity. We're constrained with regard to capacity, and that has affected economic development to some extent. And maybe we'll talk more about that in a moment, but this is the area that I'll point to that is the most constrained right now. We'll make things.
Great. So when I see a number like that and that staggering number, to me, what it underscores is that the networks that we build at Verizon are not a set it at the beginning. It takes continuous investment over the years to keep the technology up to date, to keep the diversity and resiliency in place. What we do in Nashville, Middle Tennessee, and all throughout Tennessee, I'm very proud of, but we do is keep up with that technology, and I commit of that year-over-year investment. Somewhat kind of doesn't surprise me because it takes a lot to do what we do today.
Yes, the two thoughts are good part. My governor spoke a lot about, he called this Crows Triangle, Raleigh, Nashville, Boston. We were always listed, right? And I mean, there's a list, we're all by ourselves. That's, good, bad. I mean, it brings a lot of people. Nashville up on the first 6,000 of new people come here at left. That's 93 of that. And then the thing about the workforce of these is workers can move a lot faster than infrastructure can. And Tennessee's unique in that it's out of the ability of Tennessee has been around surrounding state. I mean, as opposed to Raleigh, we got a lot of migration with New Jersey or that part of the country. So I think it's really, you're making strides, yes. I think the successes we're starting to see are, in my opinion, world here is where employers, infrastructure, and real estate are coming together. That's what we're seeing. That's what successful and Raleigh area I'm seeing here of Lord of the map doing that. From a portfolio standpoint, we tried for 20 years in Raleigh to get people to move downtown, right? And then COVID hit, and everybody getting virtual. Now we're in this kind of weird space of, okay, the 4 years, what hybrid or not, she really rethink what these areas are.
Well, I'm glad you brought up real estate because that's the next question. You talked about mindset, talk about needing for more dynamic activity, forcing that course. But there are some constraints that are showing up in projects and timelines of being able to deal with the infrastructure of the real estate. What is your perspective, and how are your teams deal with this particular issues?
Being a general contractor in Ireland, I think the obvious ones built and some of the infrastructure requirements for power distribution and transmission. I think those are a bit of the news quite a bit lately. I think everyone feels check those trains, especially with longer-term projects, where we have private corporations, private projects that are the key for the safe equipment. The electrical providers, utility scale providers, name everything. And so I think those are becoming, they have been well known for some time. I think the interesting thing is we're starting to see a lot of innovation to be straight. Folks like people sitting in this room and others around the country see opportunity. They see a lot of new people moving into that with some really innovative ideas. We're starting to see a lot of movement there, as well as a lot of investment into the factories that would build out more capacity for them. And so for me, I think the most important thing is, yes, explore the physical objects that allow us to extend the infrastructure capacity. But communities like Nashville and Middle Tennessee, those authorities having jurisdiction, also need clear processes for how out of the box thinking or how novel solutions might show up and you'll solve some of these challenges. Since you really don't know exactly what those the solution will either be. And so being transparent, being clear, and having a way to sort of test those new things out, I think is a really positive thing that community used to do while you're waiting on those physical education. So TVA. So I mentioned a while ago that was a strain relative to capacity with generation and transmission. Some of the points that were just made. It's larger projects that are showing up the most in that regard. We probably all remember a few years ago the rolling blackouts that happened for the first time in TVA's history. They kind of shone a bright light on the capacity constraints. One thing I want to point out here is that in our region, we're unique. Our supplier, our public power model, if you will, is all of us. So your voice is important. So we need to give voice to the idea and promote and support TVA and continuing to build our generation capacity. They picked up the pace. I'm glad to say we need to have more. We need to be more innovative. We need nuclear power. We need good nuclear. Tennessee's a leader in that. That's an opportunity for us. So we need to give voice to that. But also we are seeing the anti-growth movement. There is a groundswell. I like to be empathetic of that, but there's a groundswell of objectionism to infrastructure developments, which include pipelines, include transmission lines, and generation facilities. And this is something that's becoming a real big to get where we need to go and be working together, playing together, but we need to give voice to support with regard to those issues.
Just to that, well, I agree with everything you guys said. I'd say two areas that go at a constraint as much as just a development barrier. The supply chain is continuing to be real. That started several years ago. So the way in which we planned and executed one was a significant because with the logistics wasn't like up to that. I think the second thing that is a transitional period that we're in is how AI is changing not only things just internally, but all of the business partners that we do work with also live AI journey. So as we mix those things together, learning how to work with each other differently in this new world, I think that's the period that we're in now.
So to piggyback up what I was saying about innovation, I think in the workplace, there's two very competing things happening like that. What happened during COVID? Where did we all go during COVID? We all work from where? Home. And so when you look at the candidates that are applying for jobs now and the company leaders, there's never been a bigger gap between those two. So I really feel like there's innovation to be had in how we design our jobs, how jobs are done. And the AI is now in the mix. We've got some clients that have AI agents on their. I think there's a way to marry these things together. It's so simple, it's hard, right? And that keeping flexibility, but yet now we're seeing this move to forcing employees back to work. And that to me needs to be looked at. I got one of our clients in the manufacturer. They have 16 different shift combinations as a way to provide flexibility, as a way to provide 2, 3, and 4-day work weeks, which is what produces commute times. It's hard to manage. That's an example of being creative, innovative. Yet it's really what, Frank, I think the movement, you mentioned the anti-growth, there's the anti-virtual movement happening right there. A lot of companies, a lot of big companies, you see they have biotech are forcing their employees back to work. And I get it. We're plenty what are needed. So I was like, great, yeah, right. I think not being one of people, part of the culture, but I think there's a reality you can be in that way. If you involve the Lord, and I really see it differently.
What's happening is
Thank you. So let me just throw them, whereas you're leading, make sure to pick up the magazine. Because our featured in that magazine. So why don't we just get like that? So what you talked about inside of the magazine. Chris, we're going to start with you first. You spoke about sustainable and rising electricity making. And so how would that demand shape conversations around development, around where development will appear, what needs to happen to support it?
So, I'll try to have to come back and say, we need more generational impact. Yesterday, I was seeing how I have been just local power companies, there are public power companies that cover the state, to see like they're going to want to go back to services and other areas for them to movement to try. We need to be maintaining our facilities, and we were innovative with regard to, now, for example, for Middle Tennessee Electric, we're leveraging our fiber infrastructure to build we want to have the most advanced local power company, local grid that exists in the world to be more resilient with outages and to provide for opportunities for economic development. But yeah, that the demand is increasing. And we had 10 years of basically flat demand that went from like 2012 to 2022. We're seeing demand go up. And part of what's driving that, as you all would suspect, is data centers. And so to me, that word could be fearful and so, but we need data center. We need to leverage AI. We need to be part of the new economy. We need to be a player. And so when these data centers, we have a conversation, and we're talking about city-sized electric demand facilities, but we need to be able to deliver them. We want those innovators in that space, be part in our global economy, part of our ecosystem. So we need to figure this out. Part of that is some of those institutions are bringing solutions to the table. Maybe they don't their own generation. So we've got to be flexible with that. So again, it's so much about innovation, but to meet the demand that is coming, we're going to have to work together as a community.
And great point about working together. Desmond, you talked about connectivity around real estate. As much as we're in housing, building, and working with developers, connectivity, a big topic that we use. And so how does this show up in decisions around site plan, design, and project time?
Great question. Without a doubt, folks expect the network to always be on it. That's just an expectation that's out there. And we recognize that. We see connectivity, Janine and Verizon perspective, as a critical asset, and at least three ways. So because the first one in designing in that solution day one, the ability to be there and not have to retrofit because it's the best opportunity to share the surrounding area. Prime example of that is our Waterstone partnership with the Lady Houston Stadium. So we're currently engineering and with the implement and 5 kilometer arc and custom designing some network in there. And that's not like in the surface fans and concept building. What's the idea is to build on it, to start your with forward-looking fan technologies, things like biometrics, facial recognition, cashierless type solutions, all of that can be built once we build the network. The second thing I'll talk about is infrastructure density. So right outside these doors, the amount of people that visit Broadway, the Gulch, 12 South, even down into Murfreesboro, that high concentration of folks, we build an infrastructure using small cells to care for that increased capacity. And what's nice about that, rather than real estate, as real estate gets developed around the solution, the infrastructure is already there. We utilize them already. We build utility poles, light beams in the rights of way, and the network is this pump there. Right? The last point I'd say the dog is speed the market for residents. So you're talking about making decisions on where you should live, when you should rent, where you should open your business. Well, quick expansion of 5G net into Nashville and the surrounding areas really gives property managers and developers the opportunity to be able to make their property livable because they have this product that they can bring in. Doesn't require any technicians, any truck rolls, and like that. So it's a really great opportunity to help real estate get into people move in day one.
Moving in what means infrastructure has to be written. So job projects, bringing signs and delivery type helping infrastructure readiness at a site, access, factor into achieving predictability.
I think one of the words I've heard when asked to fill a panelist because it doesn't appear is the word connectivity. I think it's really, we have Verizon up here to talk about infrastructure. I think it's the sign of the time, and that's we consider like a vital infrastructure now. I've been through a power outage. I've been through an internet outage. I'll just tell you, with my family, I'm not really going through a power outage any day of the week now. If I had to pick, but I think the constraints that I see, and I think it really helps to add those works predictability in projects. It might cover mainly arch projects of these data centers Chris referred to. but also any project, small, large, whatever it is, who is your team? That sort of like social connectivity. Yes, there are going to be constraints on every project. Could be, electrical transformers. It could be lighting. It could be power access. But deals and projects are so much more complex now and so much more intertwined with all aspects of issues that having that team together, it's not a plug for my company. There's the right team, right person, every role in the project, but getting those folks lined up and really sharing and having trust and transparency is what makes these deals happen. From our perspective, we see more unpredictability and a lot of things fall shut because you don't have the right team that was forward and you're not talking about the right issues that we do because we can't overcome the same problem that popped up. And so I think that's one of the biggest things for us is getting a team together initially and then going with that team.
So Doug, he teed it up for you. He's talking about teams. We're talking about working person. So, from your company's perspective, as employers navigating or uncertain employment operating environment, how are you rethinking workforce decisions alongside growth, expanding, and knowing customer?
Yeah, so for the places like here, Broadland and all these top lists, we just cannot. I mean, it's hard to keep up with 100 people a day. It's hard to keep up. So we tell clients every day, this is the time, especially in areas in the country like this, where you've got to rethink, actively be rethinking that how, when, where they're going to work. Again, every person that leads, rethinking that position, rethinking how we can use AI, rethinking how we can use different types of employees. We're also on a demographic cliff right now. The United States has 53 now straight years of below replacement birth rates. All right, we're reaching workforce levels that we saw back in the 60s as far as the numbers of people. You've got to figure this out. As all these things happening, there's demographics happening, low birth rates. There's being in these cities like this where you're just saying, should have even people are coming here, which is a funny thing. And I think somebody said, at the same time, you've got to rethink how work is done. And a lot of people have their head in the sand on that, quite frankly. It's really time to lift up and really innovatively, creatively rethink. Now, every single job is now done as we go forward and think innovatively about that. Otherwise, it's almost not sustainable. And maybe reports are saying Austin's kind of now the other side of the cliff, maybe. Because they said, Nashville, you're still coming here. Raleigh has Charlotte, and got to figure out now to do this, or it's going to be a problem down the road.
That sustainability is important. I think what we're trying to do is ensuring that we're working collectively to make sure that we're able to sustain the infrastructure in a way that impacts housing, impacts employment, impacts the way we interact with one another, connectivity. So I have two last questions for you. So this, from planning through delivery, I think many of you have touched on this. How are infrastructure considerations affecting how the projects will you?
I think it's quite simple. If there's no infrastructure there, the project's not moving forward. I mean, full stop. Especially again, moving at scale, and there's not predictability in terms of what is available and when that timeline is. And that's not the point to figure simply at the infrastructure providers. That's quite frankly unfair and it's over simplistic. You also have to the consumer structure and the people that are needing the infrastructure put in place have to be realistic and transparent on what their actual needs are. I think there's when you see things, and I'm not an economist, but there's principle of scarcity. When people see things, perceive scarcity around things as a tendency to kind of grab as much as you can. I think we also have to be realistic about what those are, and then again engage in those upfront for the conversation, transparent about how we approach that together. Because it's not a problem one side can solve. That there's no win-lose. Got to be a win-win position for the. Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And there's with regard to power availability, this is an ad company. It's not just here, but it creates the opportunity for us to be better and for us to distinguish ourselves. And so I think we need to adopt an attitude
and a posture. Again, this is our public powerful with the that we're not satisfied with just enough power. We want an abundance. And we get in an abundance mindset and put the investments in place to do that. Yes, it means officer done on them, but to put that in place, that the opportunities I'm talking about that are out there, especially when we're on AI and data centers, they can come to Tennessee. So I think that they should be able to do this.
Yeah, I agree. I think the digital equity approach that the network is available to everyone is key and want us to into the way that we plan it. And I think they'll continue to do that.
I would just say 36% of the workforce is now what's called a gig worker. So I would just advise anyone involved in infrastructure to get employers involved, because the old adage, build it, may want to come, not necessarily when it comes to workforce. They may not, and they're much more about some of them in my life doing a lot of recruiting. But back in the good old days, and you always had more than, if you stay at that job less than 10 years, now 2 years is the average. And so they keep that in mind as we're having these identified.
Wait, absolutely. And so what kind of question, and John, I'm not up to say that I served in the reserve of the Baptist Board of Directors. So I spend a lot of time with economists.
That's pretty close. You're way beyond qualified like that.
And so you're always talking about the present, because somewhere we're going to get to the future. So this question is about the looking at it, where do you see the greatest opportunities to better net infrastructure needs with new real estate opportunities across the region?
I think that there's a huge opportunity in, like what Chris said, an abundance of power. I think there's going to be, there's a lot of different entities, sort of your traditional utility providers, but also a lot of private companies that are entering the power generation space. I think there are a ton, not only I'm not an economist, I'm not a regulator either, but I think there's a lot of safety concerns. There's a lot of regulatory concerns there. But I think over the, we talked about the future. You're when you Verizon, I mentioned we're from 5, 10, maybe even 15 years out. They also said infrastructure is a long-term challenge process. So that's the time horizon we need to be looking at. But how do we position this area, this community, Middle Tennessee, natural timber? How do we position this area to be sort of a place where the new technologies can come on thrive? There's going to be some controversy. There's going to be, there's the other hurdles of overcome with this. But I think that mentality will get us to that abundance place in the long term, where then other make will continue to flourish. I think that's how we got where we are today. I think that's how we get where we more. So agreed again. And I would encourage everyone to think along these lines and then provide your support seat. Because I think we have kind of a nexus that's developing here, if I'm used to it, for Tennessee, that include nuclear energy. Tennessee's has the potential to lead the world in nuclear energy. We're already a leader, but even more some opportunity there. That comes together with a data center, AI, quantum computing, quantum networks. And if you haven't heard of that, look into it. Don't ask me what it means, because I can't tell you, but it's cool stuff. Our president are working on that. There's capability being developed here in Tennessee. It's more of a statewide kind of a thing, an opportunity, but we can lead the world in these efforts. It is going to bring incredible economic development opportunity if they make it the right kind of investment machine.
So from a future perspective, I think that going forward on the Tuesday is your leader, everyone having a seat at the table. I think when launch development districts are being invested in, being a part of that conversation, day one, going through something together, go through the planning boards together. I think there's a real opportunity to serve those communities the way that they need to be served with technology as the future. So I think visibility to these opportunities is well up.
And I would just say, 10,000 Americans turn 65 every year, and we'll do that way through 2032. So I would just add, we're designing real estate and infrastructure for the next 10 years. The workforce of 10 years will look a lot different than it does right now. It's going to be demanding flexibility, hybrid. You got to design it, real estate, you got to design it, so it's something that parts to with that in mind, you risk going down the wrong side of the curve.
And so you have great words from great minds. Let's give a round of applause to like